Morning! Today I'm going to Yash, which is another city in Cluj, to play some poker on a stream game. We're gonna play, I think it's gonna be 2-5-10. I expect the game to get quite deep. Hopefully it's gonna be good. I wish I was more excited, but yesterday I had my biggest loss ever in a session. It wasn't a stream game, it was a live game. Yeah, I lost about 31k RON, which is about 6,000 euros. But I feel like I played well. I feel much better than other sessions where I lost last, but I felt like I made mistakes. So yeah, I'm actually quite pleased about the way I reacted to it. And yeah, I'm ready to go grind in Yash and hopefully make it all back. Finally in Yash. Went out a bit last night, maybe a bit too much. Waiting for the stream to start. Hopefully gonna make a ton of money. So yeah, let's see how it goes. First hand of the night, we face a cutoff open to 75, a flat from button, and we go for a standard squeeze of 400. We could make it slightly bigger at the stack depth though. Cutoff is the only one who calls, and we see a flop of king, king, queen. Great board for us. I decide to go for a small 300 c-bet, and then Channel gives up his trees. I open hijack with king 10 off to 75, button flats, and we go heads up to a jack 10 3 flop. Out of position, this isn't a hand that wants to go 3 street for value, so I just check with the plan of calling at least flop or going for some thin value myself on later streets. It checks through and I follow the plan, going for a 1/3 bet on the 5 turn. River comes a deuce, pretty blank, and I go for another small bet. I go for 80 and we get a call from ace high. Thinking twice about this hand, I think I might want to use a bigger bet in this spot, such as 40 or half pot, as I think people are likely to call the same range. Maybe let me know in the comments what size you would pick. This hand is a little bit weird. I open ace-9 off from +3, a bit loose, but the players behind seemed relatively tight. Hijack calls and cutoff goes for a 375 3-bet. I thought I had some live read, he can't be very strong, so I decide to put in a super loose 4-bet to 900. Cutoff tank calls, and I start to doubt my read now. Flop comes 5, 7, 4, 2 spades. I have no spade and not much equity either, so I decide to give up for now. My opponent checks back quite quickly, so I think it's unlikely he has a pair. Turn pairs the 4 and I now go for a pot size bet, hoping he folds, better ace high, or hands with decent equity that might bluff me otherwise. He folds the ace queen and we scoop the first nice pot of the session. I've been pretty card dead for a while, but now I look down at ace jack off in the cutoff. I open to 150 over the straddle and cause in the big blind calls. We see a flop of ace 10 7. We are deep and we definitely have the advantage here, while cause can also have a lot of pairs and draws that he can continue with. To leverage this, I think going for a bigger size and a more polished strategy makes sense. I go for a pot size, but he has to fold his deuces. Maxi opens under the gun to 75, I go for a 3-bet in the cutoff to 300 with king jack off, Maxi calls. We go 3 ways to a flop of 8 deuce deuce 2 clubs. I consider checking back without a backdoor flush draw, but then I think my opponent also can't hit the board very often, and I expect him not to check raise very frequently, so I put in a small bet of 250. To my surprise, Maxi does check raise, and we have to let it go. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments if you prefer the bet or the check back here. At this point in time, the game was a bit boring, so we decided to make it a Squid Game, meaning whoever was the last one not to win a hand had to pay 100 to each player. This provides more action and makes the game more entertaining. Calls opening +2 and I decide to flat queen 8 off on the big blind. This is loose, but I gotta get that bounty. Board jack 9 7 provides me with some possibilities. Flop goes check check, the turn's a king. Not a great turn for me, so I don't wanna bet very often. I check and cause goes for a 3/4 bet. It is quite easy for him to overbluff here, as he's probably betting a lot of his kings on the flop. I decide to play it aggro and put in a 600 check raise that goes through, winning us the hand and the bounty. Cause opens on +1, +3 and hijack call, and I go for a 475 squeeze in the small blind. Cause calls and Christie goes for a weird back raise to 1.9k. It folds to me and I do think this is weird and don't really give him much credit. I think of shoving for a while, but I do block bluffs and I decide it's too much of a high variance play and I don't want to take it, so I fold It proved that I was right, he had king 10 suited. There's a straddle to 100 this time. Cutoff opens to 250 and I go for a 600 3-bet on the button with ace jack off. We get a call and we see a ace 10 6 flop. Pretty good for me, I go for a small range bet to 300. Our opponent calls and turn comes an ace, bringing a flash draw to diamonds. Here, if I use a small size, I can still bet the low ace-x and even some under pairs, so I go for 700 and Georgiev folds. We reset the bounties, so I gotta fight to win a pot. I open queen deuce suited in the cutoff to 75, small blind calls and calls completes in the big blind. Flop is ace ace 10, very good for me and again quite difficult for them to hit. I put in a small 60 c-bet and small blind calls. There's a 6 and now my opponent goes for a 200 donk. I've seen him before having weird and mergy donks, so I did consider raising, but I thought it's not that easy for him to have random bluffs when he calls with a player left to act, so I let it go. Turns out my opponent was kinda full of shit and had king 6 offsuit. Under the gun opens, +1 flats, I look down at ace 3 suited and I could call with a passive button behind, however I decide to 3-bet this time. They both call and we see an ace 10 4 flop. It's a bit thin to bet here, but I thought they have a lot of gut shots and middle pairs I don't wanna offer free equity to, as they will call a bet anyway. I go for a small 275 c-bet, under the gun gives up, but +1 calls. Turn 7 of clubs, we both check. Now our hand is way too mergy to do anything else. River, king of diamonds, brings in the flush. My opponent checks quickly, making it unlikely he has 2 pair or better. However, he can still have hands like ace-jack and ace-queen, and I'm not sure he'd call enough worse hands, so I check back and win against king-jack off. Christie opens in a middle position to 75. He looks like he has a good hand and we know he doesn't like folding to 3-bets. Big blind is also tight passive, so I go for an unorthodox flat in the small blind. Big blind comes along and we see a nice flop of jack 9-7. Big blind goes for a 125 donk and Christie raises to 400. Tough spot for me with bottom set on a board where they could have a fair amount of better hands, plus there are a lot of equity shifting turns, so I just call. Turn brings a 6, which is pretty blank. I don't think Julian would lead here, and I expect Christie to chuck back a lot of overpairs and draws facing this action, therefore I lead myself 800. They both fold, unfortunately. I open 6s on +1 to 150 over the straddle and I get 5 calls. We are super multi-way and we see a king 7-8 flop. Not much I can do with so many players in the pot, so it goes check check check. The 7th turn also checks through. River is a jack and now it checks to me. I decide to turn my 6s into a bluff and bet 300. I thought I can fold out some 8x, 7x and maybe even 9s. However, I'm not sure this is a good play as my hand blocks some of the hands I want them to fold and it's also quite likely someone has a jack. Let me know in the comments what you think, and PS, I wouldn't have made this play without the need to win a bounty. Enchanu limps under the gun over the 50 straddle and we look at 6s again. I go for an ISO to 225, he calls and we see the flop heads up. Not much else to do but check back on queen 10-8. Turn is a 10 and it goes check check again. My hand is way too good here to be turned into a bluff. River, 4 of hearts, completes the flush and now my opponent goes for a tiny 200 bet. I've seen him bluffing using bigger sizes before, but I don't think this is sufficient to build a solid read. I think his range is wide enough to find bluffs here, and we get good odds, so I call. Unfortunately, he shows the nut flush, and we lose. I open jacks in +2, +3, hijack, and big blind call. Straddle squeezes to 1000, and now this is quite a tricky spot. I don't want to call and go to the flop multi-way, but I also don't think he's gonna be very wide here. I thought people behind can't call the squeeze very often, so I take my chances and call. I don't like to see that Julian comes along. We see a ace queen 10 flop, which isn't what we wanted, however, we have a nice hand to bluff facing a check. Straddle does check, and I put in a 1.2k bet, planning to go for 3 streets if I'm heads up with Aurelian. I thought Julian won't have 10s or ace queen too often as I expected him to 3-bet me, but seems like that's a wrong assumption. If the assumption is wrong, my bet is also bad. They both call and I now decide to just give up. I check to Julian on the 6th turn, he goes all in, we both fold, and it turns out he had a set of 10s. Last hand of the night, I wake up with jacks once again. I open under the gun to 75, Julian calls, and Cos goes for a 350 in position. It falls to me, and I put in a 4-bet to 800. Cos calls, and the board comes down King 9-3 all hearts. I will mostly have suited hands, and King High is very good for me, so even though my hand doesn't look great, I can still bet my whole range if I bet small enough. I see bet 300, Cos has to fold, and we pink a nice spot, ending the evening with a profit of 3.4k. Right, so this was the game. As you can see, it was pretty raggish, but after the stand-up game started, it actually got way better. Still, I really enjoyed it. I like traveling in other parts of the country or other countries to play poker, to meet new people, to make some connections. You never know what gets out of there. We also won a bit, so can't complain. Tomorrow there's another game. It's gonna be 5-10, so a bit smaller, but I still expect the stacks to be deep and maybe the game to be a bit better. So I'll see you in the next one.